What's up, Facebook engineers? Tonight we're going to dissect this video and decide whether or not it's reasonable that Captain Douchebag back here could have reached in and slid this slider up and got inside of here without his stupid little scotch tape and rubber band trick. So the first thing I noticed about the video is the style of the chain lock. So using that information, you can look up these different ones, get some specs off of them. And one thing I noticed is these chains, 8 links. 8 links right here. The chain in the video, it's way too long. I can count at least 10 links, and I might be missing 1 link right here. Another thing that tells me the chain is too long is, check this out. This door right here is at least 1.75 inches thick. This distance right here is about double that thickness, plus 2 more chain links. So this chain is approaching 8 to 10 inches long. There's no way it's 3 or 4 inches long, as we see in the specs of these. You can see the chain length. This is a common number, 3.34. So there is no way this chain is that short. An inside door, like in a bedroom, is 1.75 inches thick, and this door is probably actually thicker than that. So the door thickness plus double the door thickness, this chain is way too long for this. I mean, maybe the chain did come with 10 links, but to install it this close to the edge of the door, it's fucking ridiculous. Another little piece of data. The angle of this, it's probably not quite 45 degrees. It might be 45 degrees, but we'll just pretend like it's 45 degrees to give a little extra margin of error to make this a little harder for me to prove. So, using our specs, our 3 7/16, I've mocked up a 45 degree chain slider. So here's our chain slider, mocked up at 45 degrees. And what we want to determine is, if I had a chain that was about 8 to 10 inches long, that was stretched taut and resting inside of here and anchored over here somewhere, how much extra distance would I need to get my chain up to this hole? So that's easy to calculate. Here's the 45, and here's the distance between those two. So what is our distance? Let's try this handy yardstick, and let's put this little part on the center. So the distance looks like about 1.25 inches, maybe a little bit less. So for that chain, if it was right here, fully tight, it would need to get 1.25 inches longer to reach that point. Another way you can determine this is just let this thing represent our chain, and we can safely guess that the chain is about 8 inches long. So I'll move 8 inches down my ruler right here, and we'll say that's the anchor point, and say right there is where it's really tight. And for the chain to reach that point, whatever distance, I'm arcing it right now, I'm arcing the chain, whatever the distance is between that point and that point is going to be how much longer the chain needs to be. So again, we can check it, and again we are at about 1.25 inches between that point and the center of there. So it's reasonable to say that we need a distance change of 1.25 inches in order to get that chain out of there. So back to the video. Here in the video, you can see the guy has full articulation of his arms. He's using his wrist, his upper arm is in. So he has his forearm, his elbow has been pushed through, and it looks like his bicep and tricep, almost approaching his shoulder, is in the door. And he's got room to move. And let's look at where the chain is right now. You can see the chain is not fully taut. So if the chain was taut, fully tight, it would be flat. It's just kind of drooping right now. As we all know, if you have a piece of rope or chain and it's loose, it'll hang down. So right now, the chain is not horizontal with its anchor point, with its two anchor points. It's drooping. So there's even more distance that could be gained at this point. So the question is, could he, with his arm in the door, gain 1.25 inches, which would be enough to push that slider up to where it can fall out? Could he gain 1.25 inches at that point? So let's do a test to decide if he could gain 1.25 inches. So here's the door, and here's an arm. Now this arm might be a little bigger than the one from the video, but we'll put the arm in the door, close the door up against the arm, and let's record the inches of measurement with that arm in the door. Alright, so I got my arm in the door, loose enough that I can move it around like the guy in the video. And what do we got here? We got 3 inches. And I actually think the door in the video was open more than 3 inches, but we'll say 3 inches. Okay. So at that point, let's just say I'm the guy and I got my arm in the door doing all my Scotch tape work. What happens if I push the door tight on my arm? I mean, I can still move it, but maybe I grab the door handle on the outside and I pull the door in. So just using my free finger, I'm pushing the door in, and let me double check that. I'm using the centimeter mark as a reference. So I push the door in, and I'm not really trying very hard either, so you could probably get even more. And that put me at 1.75 inches. Huh. So I gained exactly 1.25 inches by gently pushing the door in with this free finger. So I mean, realistically, I probably could have relaxed my arm and gained a little bit more. So if I can gain 1.25 inches with my arms, I'm pretty sure this guy could. And I'm pretty sure this guy probably could have gained a little bit more, given the fact that if you look, even at the beginning of the video, the chain is still loose, and the opening of the door, this span of the opening, is at least twice the distance of this door. So, and also, he could have gained more than 1.25 inches by having just his wrist or just his forearm in instead of his upper arm like he did in the video. So given all this raw data, you can decide for yourself. And one thing to consider also is when I collected all this data, like the 45 degrees, if you look at the video pretty close, that slider, this little thing that the chain is in the video, is probably actually not at 45 degrees. It looks to be a little less. It looks to be more like that maybe. And in that case, you would have needed even less distance to get that off. It's like, one thing to understand is if the slider would have been like this, the distance needed to get that chain from here to here would be in direct relation to the opening of the door. And the more that the slider is towards this way, that distance decreases. And it's just like if this was an arc, the distance from the center of the arc does not decrease as fast. So if this ruler was the chain, here's the chain taut, here's the chain loose, the distance only decreased this much. Whereas if it was installed this way, if I tried to move that chain, I would have to stretch it all the way over here in order to move it. So with all of my measurements, I was lenient towards making myself fail on this test. But I think I won on this test. So distance of change needed is 1.25 inches, probably less. And we definitely got 1.25 inches, and we probably could have got more. And the guy in the video definitely could have got more than 1.25 inches. Just looking at the looseness of his chain and the fact that he had so much of his body in the door, he could have pulled out and got some more distance.